Hey, how's it going? Well, we're back at it again to read my second book, Deviations of Defiance. And we will start off, or continue on with Chapter 3, Plans. The sun had now begun to rise upon the market village of Atrodnaya. Its golden rays turned into red streams of blood leaking out of the mountains surrounding the village. The birds were distant, and the market itself was now empty. Hans pulled himself together after a long time fretting and working within his own mind on what to do. He had only come up with one action possibly open to him. The halfling would find any other hobbits in this village. Perhaps a kindly one had taken pity on him and his family in this moment of his utter weakness. He had spent the night in the streets. Not his wisest decision, but he had subsequently been robbed of all of his money and belongings while he had been knocked out. Just another thing to add to the list for when he would be torturing that damned dwarf. Oi, how he hated dwarves. In the city, they at least approved of his cooking, but he still dreamed of the days when they weren't in charge. Those days would come about again. He would see to it. In the meantime, he had to gauge his situation and find some hobbits. Halflings weren't nearly as prominent as they were in the city of Ostanovka, or in the fields of their far-off homeland of Lilitonia, but halflings had managed to travel far and wide. Perhaps there was some sort of dissident community of them in these dragon-backed mountains. They always preferred grasslands, but hobbits were ingenious trading folk, and the coal of Atrodnaya may have brought them all the way up to this village. Hans had no clue where to start. However, the taverns of a town were always a good place to find rumors of the local residents in the area. Hans had a great deal of experience in the spices, so maybe he could find a friendly cook to help him out. Not all halflings were cooks, but because of their small size in the world, they had just such nimble little fingers that a majority now fell into that position. And who knows, maybe one of them could have heard about the master chef, Hans Ardevart. The halfling had since wiped away all manner of dirt off of his outfit, but he had still started to stink like a hog. He found a nearby water trough and washed himself off in it as best he could. It wasn't very good, but at least it was something. He stopped washing upon seeing his reflection in the water. A bloodshot-eyed man stared up at him from the cloudy water. His hawk nose was still intact, thankfully, although it was twisted in a way that his hands hadn't felt earlier. His beard contained random little pieces from the ground. Hans vigorously tried to extract those pieces in an attempt to make himself presentable. He had gotten used to a hated life, but this was a new attack on his character. He finally slicked back what remained of his thick brown hair and set his face in order. He would need to rally all the charm he had left in him for the next set of spectacles. Hans went to the closest tavern he could spot from the market. It was a very unusual one. The sign posted out front was one made up of a 3-headed genie pig. Genie pigs were rare and very hard to find, especially at this time in the world. It was a very good representation, then, of what he hoped to find in that tavern: answers, and a slim chance that his wishes might be granted. But he doubted highly that they would be. Such was the mindset of our hobbit as he entered this ramshackle curved building. It was surprising alone that it still stood, for it looked as if the place had been there since the founding of Atrodnaya. Wood peeled off the sides of the not-so-illustrious entrance of this tavern. It was likewise painted in a blue and green pattern, like the sign was. Still, at least whoever had done the painting had done a decent job of it. Hans was swiftly reminded of his own restaurant back in Ostanovka. This broke him out of his very vengeful mindset for a second. He remembered all the joys of opening up his own business for the first time. It didn't matter that his Uncle Manrift had done the primary backing. No, he had made it single-handedly, almost, and that's all that mattered. Hans had fought against all odds to get that place as his own. That original building was likewise painted in a solid blue and green pattern. The outside was much different, however. It was brand new, and he knew it. There weren't many full-time chefs who could actually afford their own restaurant, and he wasn't about to let it die. That place was really bustling with customers, not like this tavern that he entered now. As he entered, in the very early morning, Hans was first of all surprised to see that the place was now even open. His second surprise came about at the amount of sheer drunks who resided in this town. Sure, there were plenty of other taverns to go to in this village, but for some reason, almost all of the drunks must have wound up here. Hans thought it might be because of the lateness of service. But there was really something to be said of the inside of that place. The tables were dusty and dribbled with drink all over them. A mix of alcohol and some sort of soup smell hung in the air, and spilled in various puddles all over the place. Those drunks were splayed out in various positions of comfort, either buried in their meals or their arms on the rickety tables. Either way, they were thoroughly enjoying their time at this tavern. The barkeep was a rather fat man, with rolls of flesh hanging off his every limb. He wasn't well cared for. What teeth he had left were yellowed through. Though, he liked to flash that almost gruesome smile around. Maybe it made him feel confident in his own skills behind that clean counter. Maybe he was hiding some decrepit section of this soul. Hans didn't know. Though he saw that this human's face was rather well kept, and his locks of black hair were tied into a rather smart ponytail. This tavern man's sight fell onto the tiny nature and terrible-looking outfit of Hans Artevart. Hans shuddered at meeting the brown gaze of this man. Ever since that horrible attack on his uncle's wedding back in Ovlachk, the halfling grimaced and felt queasy just remembering those bodies slain by those evil serfs who had simply wanted what they called freedom. How many lives had their freedom cost in the end? They all got their freedom from this world, as that hanging commenced to mete out justice on those evildoers. The hobbit shook off these thoughts quickly, trying not to dare remember that terrible time in his life. How his Uncle Manrift ever got over it, he didn't know. Life goes on, though, and now Hans was in a similar, if not worse, scenario. Still, he was loath to trust any human so easily anymore. The tavern keeper was certainly more than happy to trust a halfling. He turned his smile into an even wider grin, and with a lisp, he started at Hans. "Master Halfling, it's so good to see another one of your kind to enter my humble establishment. In such a short time, too. We don't see many of you here in our Trondheim. Tell me, what can I do for you?" Hans quickly made eye contact, and broke it off, saying, "My good barkeep, I'm in most dire straits. I haven't had a bite to eat since yesterday afternoon, and I'm absolutely famished." The tavern owner turned a sad eye upon this man. But quickly he cheered up, saying, "That's most fortuitous of you to come in here, then. I have a really delicious barley stew, fresh made for you." The halfling put on his saddest expression as he said, "Alas, I was robbed in the night. As you've probably noticed my pitiable appearance. I would have nothing to pay you with, my good sir. But if you could point me in the right direction towards that other hobbit, I'd be able to pay you. I was traveling in a company of halflings, you see, when I got separated and attacked. They must have left me for dead and moved on." The barkeep took a sort of condescending and yet consoling tone with him this time. "Now, I know times are tough, and there's all sorts of monsters prowling the land, but we shouldn't put our friends down so easily. That halfling is out back in some of our rooms. I'm certain they'll be happy to find you alive. Here, you've earned that stew." The man put a big steaming pile of his brownish stew right in front of Hans before he could even blink. The next thing he knew, there was a large wooden spoon in it ready for him to enjoy. There were chunks of some sort of substance rolling around in that stew. The halfling had no idea what those could be. Still, it smelled heavenly to Hans's almost broken nostrils. "Enjoy. If you go out back behind me here, they'll be in the third floor from the left. I know. I was surprised that thee was traveling alone in our times, especially with what's been going on in the village as of late." "Really? What's been going on in Atronaya? I thought it was just a coal town that might host some very good spices." "Good spices we have in abundance, thanks to the dragonbacks you see all around." The tavern keep laughed a bit before becoming serious in utter gravity. Even his lisp seemed to disappear. "Yes, some strange happenings with the army in town now. I've heard rumors that even the second prince is with them. That would really mean something is going on. There was some sort of commotion last night. Don't know what that was about, but can't be anything good." He cheered up suddenly and said, "Now you get that food in you, and find your friend quickly, and all will be well, Master Halfling." And with that, he left to tend to the rest of the stained glasses at the bar, not paying any more attention to the halfling who was left standing right in front of him with that soup. Hans didn't have time to question it. He was too excited to be on a trail that led to more halflings. Of course, he didn't mind lying to this stupid human. Anything to get his way, to get vengeance. Hans deftly carried that piping hot bowl of soup in his now burning hands as he passed the fat man, and went out into the backyard in search of this woman. Some place this was. It was very unassuming from the front. There was a whole extra wing back there with rooms for people. Sure, it was just as rickety as the tavern, but now he'd at least be able to move forward with his plans. Hans approached the door to this woman's room very trepidatiously. He had no real idea of what to expect. The absolute best outcome would be if she recognized him from his time cooking in Ostanovka. Then it'd be really something easy for him. She'd bask in meeting a famous chef and be all smiles and help him with whatever he needed. And what he needed would be simple to ask for. Directions to his children and a knife. Easy peasy it should be. But as the reader probably already guessed, life isn't so nice to the common halfling. No, they normally have to grovel and act like some sort of grabbler in their mission just to get by. And no one liked grabblers. Hans took the soup thoroughly in his hand and knocked with the other. Once, twice, thrice. It was on the fourth that she finally opened that solid piece of wood, which felt like stone previously to him. The air stood still for the span of a second, while he enjoyed the most beautiful of all sights. Another halfling! The human hadn't lied after all. A better sight would have been his own children reclaimed, or his wife Archibalda Ardevart. who he hadn't seen for what felt like months. Why would he go on this stupid task to get spices and take his children, but not have his wife accompany him? Even Manreft wasn't here to be his most expert spice merchant. Oh no, Hans had thought that this would be fun. Some father bonding time with the kids. He was always off doing something without them. Always cooking or cleaning and trying to make the best of this sodden damn plane of existence. Damn these lands. Damn his misfortune, and being dealt these cards for life. If only he had been born a dwarf, then all would be nice and easy for him and his family. He would be accepted everywhere, as the great master chef of Ramarden. But no, his talents were now deemed to obscurity by those who didn't know him, by an unjust world, a cruel world, which favored dwarves above all else. Hans had thought about getting out of Ramarden at one point, fleeing to Romarkia or Capistonia on its borders, but that damned war had ruined it all for him. Now, hardly anyone could get to the other kingdoms without an immense deal of wealth and influence. Even though his whole life was in Ostanovka, he still would have made the best decision to leave in a heartbeat. Now, there was simply no time to think about escaping. All he could do was think about scrabbling together the pieces of his ruined life. He was able to do that mildly successfully up until this point. Now, however, it seemed that all hope was gone of resuming a normal life again with his children missing. Hans's head swirled around with these thoughts, so much so that he managed to fall unconscious at the feet of this halfling, and to burn himself quite badly. And that is the end of Chapter 3, Plans. Well, I hope you enjoyed reading from my second book, Deviations of Defiance. You can find it on Amazon by looking up J.S. Golson, or just searching Deviations of Defiance. And you can check out my author profile there with all my other works. I have 3 books out now, really good. And if you could share this or give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe, that'd be great. Thank you. Have a good one.